It is Friday, and it's another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can always follow me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Since it's a Friday, we're going to do our Mailbag Friday in the opening segment. Got about 10 or 11 questions to get into, and I'll have some answers for that. Next, I want to give you an organization that I think is the model organization for the Royals to model themselves and go try to win like. So that's going to be coming up in our second segment. And lastly, let's dive into this Philadelphia Phillies series preview. The Royals have won 6 in a row. We'll go for number 7 tonight with Jordan Lyles on the bump against Aaron Nola. All of that is coming up next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Things first, we want to thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen every day. And you can always find us on those podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and you can never miss us on YouTube. Just be sure to follow along and hit that subscribe button. We've added a ton of new subscribers just this week alone. We've added a ton in the last month since I took over as the host. And of course, that's been continuing with our views and downloads and all of that. You've made it possible for this podcast to keep going and going strong. So all those podcasting platforms and YouTube. But if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You just want a link handed to you. I tweet those out daily. As you know that with Locked On Royals, we give you content Monday through Friday. But as we do on Fridays, at least we've tried to stay pretty consistent with it, is Mailbag Fridays. And these are always welcome. I genuinely look at the questions that are shot over to me on Twitter, and we got about 10 or 11 to get into, and a lot of them do involve the man of the hour, if you will, Bobby Witt Jr. We had a podcast on him yesterday and what his surge could mean for the future of the Kansas City Royals. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into some of these questions from you, the followers, you, the listeners, and you, the fans. So this is from Millerman on Twitter. Who is one player you would like to see the Royals target this offseason? I think a couple times since taking over as host of Locked On Royals, I've dove into some free agency type of news. I've dove into some hypotheticals, what the Royals could do, how much money they're going to spend. But I think everybody is aware at this point that starting pitching is going to be where the Royals invest. I mean, you're not going to roll into the season like you did this year, banking on Brad Keller, banking on Daniel Lynch, Chris Bubich, Brady Singer. And Brady Singer's looked good about his last 15 starts. Cole Reagans looks to be the part. But I can't bank on Daniel Lynch being in this rotation next year. As much as I'd want to with the way he looked in April, I can't bank on Chris Bubich being in this rotation because guys coming off Tommy John usually take a step back. It takes a long time to recover from that. Don't want to see Jordan Lyles in the rotation, and Zach Greinke's not going to be back. So if I'm looking for cost-effective guys, or if you want to go one step further and say, no, I want to hear your thoughts on a jackpot deal. Well, if it's a jackpot deal, I think the Royals should go in heavy pursuit of Jordan Montgomery, who was with the Cardinals, pitched incredibly well, then got dealt to the Rangers. I believe he makes his debut tonight. But Jordan Montgomery is a guy that could be the workhorse. That's the ace, a big, tall lefty. Doesn't throw incredibly hard, but he's the exact type of guy the Royals have been missing for about the last 5 to 6 years. I mean, that is your workhorse. You want to spend money, you want to get one guy, it's Jordan Montgomery. If you're just looking for a affordable guy, maybe get a couple. I keep bringing up the same guys over and over again. And it's Kyle Gibson of the Baltimore Orioles, and it's Martin Perez, who just got demoted to the bullpen for the Rangers. Now, Martin Perez was an all-star 2 years ago. Down numbers this year, but we've seen the Royals do this. They like bounce-back guys. And Martin Perez, he raids the zone. That's the Royals' motto for their pitching staff. You're not going to have to worry about him having a high pitch count through 4 or 5 innings. He's typically a guy that'll live in the zone, and he plays to his defense. As for Kyle Gibson, okay-ish numbers, but again, he's going to be affordable. Over the age of 35, he was a 1-year deal for Baltimore. Really like his slider. I think that paired nicely as a 3 or 4 guy in the rotation for Kansas City. But if it's one guy that I'm targeting. On the pitching side, it's Jordan Montgomery. If I'm targeting somebody for a bat, for a lineup guy, I'm going after Kevin Kiermaier, who's with Toronto right now. I'd give him a 1-year deal. That's Gold Glove defense out in center field, and he's been pretty productive in the games that he's played offensively for the Jays this season. So, good question there from Millerman. This one's from Dwight. Is Witt the most talented tools player in Royals history? Bo, the only one I can think of as a comparable. I think right now we have a little bit of recency bias with what Bobby Witt Jr. is doing. He's pacing, it feels like right now, for a 30-50 season. He might win a Gold Glove at shortstop. Maybe Wander Franco gets it because he, by every metric right now, is above Bobby Witt Jr. defensively. But I can't really deny that he could be the toolsiest player. Right? You brought up Bo, and Bo Jackson, of course, was a marvel. I think Bo Jackson not only was one of the biggest marvels in Royals history, he was in sports history. His size, his speed, his power. But when we're talking about tools, okay, tools is glove, is speed, is bat, is power, all of that combined. When you have the toolsiness of a player, a 5-tool player. Bobby Witt Jr. is a 5-tool player. Even the best Royal of all time, George Brett, wouldn't say was a 5-tool player. He's the best player in Royals history, and nobody's going to say Bobby Witt Jr. is better than that right now, or even trending to be better than that. He's got a long ways to go. But in terms of tools, I would like to give the edge to Bobby Witt Jr. because, A, he's arguably the fastest guy in baseball. He's one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball. For his size, he's got tremendous power, tremendous bat speed. The swing and miss is still there. But I think that the biggest part of his game that's lacking is drawing walks. But I think he is on that platform right now. And toolsiness doesn't mean overall numbers. I think he is the toolsiest player because of everything he brings to the table. Bo can be, and maybe I should eat my words here because Bo Jackson is one of the most miraculous players to ever play the sport. He never really had the numbers and didn't play long enough, but tools, yeah, arm, power, speed, it was all there. Maybe I'm going to walk it back a little bit. I think for now it's still Bo Jackson because I think it was more impressive to see somebody at his size run at that speed. Bobby Witt Jr. is faster, but he's also not built like Bo Jackson. So for now, I'm going to say Bo Jackson, but Bobby Witt Jr. is right behind him. That's a good question from Dwight. Chance asked, what do you think is the best and worst Royals jerseys of all time? I think we need to bring back the black alternates and turn ahead the clock jerseys. I'm actually a fan of the black jerseys. If I had to vote the best Royals jersey of all time, it's the powder blues, the baby blues. Top to bottom, too. It's not the powder blues and the white pants. It's straight through. Powder blues were the best Royals uniform of all time. It is really not a debate. Do love the City Connects. Those have really grown on me. I like those a lot. The worst ones, it's the vests. The white tops, the blue sleeves, the vests were disgusting. They were terrible. The turn ahead the clock, those were bad back in the 90s, I believe it was. They tried to recreate that in 2018 or 19. Those were better, but not as bad as the one back then in the 90s. So I'm going to go with the powder blues is the best ones. The worst ones, those white vests they used to wear on occasion at Kauffman Stadium. Chance also asked, do you see any trades happening this offseason? I can see Salvi, Olivares, and Singer. I'd imagine they're gonna entertain the Salvi deal again. I think they're gonna try to contact Miami and see what pieces can be available. The good thing about trading in the offseason is it's not just contenders. You're not trading Salvador Perez to just contenders. You could have a bad team trying to build around a middle-of-the-lineup catcher. That'd be kind of far-fetched, but they needed to add a catcher to their lineup. They needed to add a powerful middle-of-the-bat guy. It doesn't have to be a contender, right? What if, let's say, looking on the National League side, let's say the Pirates, not that they would do this, but let's say the Pirates did it. You trade Salvador Perez to the Pirates, you're not really worried about Salvador Perez haunting you for the next couple of years because you don't play the Pirates that much. So I think that they are going to entertain that. I think Olivares is probably the most likely to be dealt because he just doesn't fit into the future. It's going to take a lot, though, to move a guy like Brady Singer and Salvador Perez. Owen asked, will Witt Jr. surpass Freddie Patek as the best Royals shortstop ever? I love this question. I even tweeted it. That is such a stain on the Royals organization that there hasn't been many shortstops. Bobby Witt Jr. will likely surpass that next year. I think by what he brings to the table, if he continues to trend this way, and it's not saying a lot, but he should surpass Freddie Patek and all the other shortstops as the best one in Royals franchise history. Brody asks, how much money will the Royals spend in free agency for next year? A lot of it does depend on how the young guys, their young core, finish out the rest of the year. If you have Bobby Witt Jr., Michael Garcia, Brady Singer, Cole Reagans, Melendez, Drew Waters really play well, John Sherman said in that press conference in front of the Royals Hall of Fame, they were trying to find the core because they're ready to spend. They get a core, they're going to spend. I'm not going to say a lot, but it would surprise me if the Royals didn't add about 2 to 3 guys on bigger deals, more than just a 1-year rental. I could see the Royals doing a 2 or 3 year deal for a couple of guys out there, more notably in the rotation. It looks like, oh yes, good friend 150 Guacamole on Twitter said, should the Royals explore trading Gavin Cross this offseason if he finishes in a slump? If he starts in AA next year, do you see him having a chance to crack the 26-man roster? No, I don't think Gavin Cross is cracking the roster next year. He's struggling way too much right now. And I'm not sure the value is that high. I mean, if you go to a team and say, we're willing to trade you Gavin Cross, somebody could turn him around, right? I still think he was a younger college hitter. But again, it's more so of, well, he's struggling a lot in high A. Everybody else seems to be thriving. The college hitters, they move rather quickly. Not for Gavin Cross. I'd hang on to him. I wouldn't punt just yet on Gavin Cross. I still think there's something in there, but he needs a hard reset. It is not going to get any better for him this season, at least not significantly better. I think you would see a good stretch or two, but right now it's just not going well for Gavin Cross. I'd hang on to him, but no, he's not making the roster next year. Jackson asks, how eerily similar would you expect Bobby Witt Jr.'s contract extension to be in comparison to the Julio Rodriguez contract with all the options and such? I think it'd be pretty close. I mean, the Royals understand that this is a guy they need to lock up long term. I know there'll be some people saying, well, why don't you trade him next year? You'll get a lot in return. I don't think the Royals want to do that. The Royals feel like they've got a superstar. They're going to try to give him that long-term extension. A lot of it comes down to Bobby Witt Jr. After this year, does he bet on himself? Say, well, I'm not going to sign a long-term deal for a team that's not going anywhere, at least for the next 3 to 4 years. Why don't I bet on myself? And then when my rookie deal's up, when I'm eligible to go past arbitration and I'm a free agent, I can sign wherever. That just means he's not going to be making a lot of money over the next couple of years. I think the Royals are going to really open up their wallets for a guy like him because he's a player you simply just don't let walk away. Devin asks, if Singer rides high this year, do you move him or do you flip him with his contract coming up? I think if Brady Singer pitches really well down the stretch, you do entertain him as a trade candidate at the winter meetings coming up here in a couple of months. I just think because he's so inconsistent, you bank on another team saying, okay, we feel like we can really turn him into something. Therefore, we're going to give you a handful of prospects. The fear is you trade into somebody like the Dodgers or you trade into somebody like the Rays, which I think you should just stay away from those teams. He's going to turn into an absolute stud, an absolute frontline guy because they know how to handle guys like Brady Singer. That's not to knock the Royals pitching development. Those two teams are just in another league. Houston, same thing. They know how to really enhance a pitcher's abilities. And I think with Brady Singer, he's one of the guys that can. But I think the Royals want to hang on to him because now he's getting to 26 and 27. Is he worth a long-term extension? Not coming off the year that he's had this year. And lastly, Taco asks on Twitter, when should the Royals trade Bobby Witt Jr. to get max value for him in return? This is another part of the contract deals, right? If you don't want to extend him or you feel like you're not going to contend with him there, I would trade him maybe 2 years down the road. I think you really need him. If that's the route you choose, and I don't think the Royals go that route, but if that's the route the Royals were to choose for whatever reason, I'd wait 2 years. You want to get an all-star game or two under their belt. You want them to be, top 20 in total WAR. Right now, Bobby Witt Jr. is top 30. I think he gets there next year. Then that's when you trade him. He's not a Juan Soto player, but the Nationals did the same thing. Everybody scoffed at the Nationals trading Juan Soto until they did, and they got a haul in return. I don't think Bobby Witt Jr. would get that just yet, but we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. Okay, we're a little bit late on that segment. That was a lot of questions for Mailbag Friday, but when we come back here, we're going to talk about an organization that I believe is a model one to follow for the Kansas City Royals. That's coming up next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find us on all those podcasting platforms like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, and you can check us out on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. You can also find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. _15. Before we go any further with our show today, let's give a shout out to today's sponsor in eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. When you get into a winning streak like this for the Royals, we discussed this in yesterday's episode, that it's more so of living in the now. You never want to take a 6-game winning streak for a team that's 40 games under 500 and spin it and say, well, now that means next year they're going to have a lot of stretches like this. Oh, the young core is ready to go. We saw this in 2018. We saw it in 19. We saw it in 21. We saw it in 22. We saw hot stretches. But it doesn't always mean that carries over. There's a long layoff after this season ends. Teams get hot. Teams get cold. That's baseball. But I think the Royals are coming to a crossroads in the offseason where they got to pick a route. They got to pick a route as to how they want to rebuild this team. I don't think that you can contend in the next 3 to 4 years if you choose the Baltimore Orioles route. And the Baltimore Orioles route is more so of an anomaly, I would say. Maybe not an anomaly because Houston and Chicago kind of did the same thing. But they also got Mike Elias from the Houston Astros. And that meant a lot of their draft picks were going to hit. Their scouting department, player development, the whole 9 yards. It was fantastic. And that's why I think the Baltimore Orioles are not the model organization, because the Royals don't have Mike Elias. They don't have a guy from another organization controlling everything that's done it before. That's why I'm against the Baltimore Orioles path. Now, if John Sherman made a change in the front office and it was no longer J.J. Piccolo, and let's say you hire somebody from a successful organization that's built up a smaller market team and made them a top contender, then we have a different story. But I don't think the Royals are there yet. The Tampa Bay Rays path is also, I think, kind of unlikely because their player development system, top to bottom, is so much higher, leaps and bounds ahead of every other team in Major League Baseball because they never spend, and they're always at the top of the American League. Kevin Cash, a great manager. They got Matt Quatraro and Paul Hoover over from Tampa Bay. But just because you get Tampa Bay coaches doesn't mean that's the path you're going to go for. Okay, to me, that doesn't feel like a likely path because you just have to really overhaul your entire system. The Royals are doing good things in the minor leagues. They are developing a lot of guys, but they're not the Tampa Bay's level yet. I think you need to have a blueprint, a very firm, in stone, written down how you're going to approach the next 2 years. So the first two, I think to every Royals fan feels pretty nice, right? Baltimore, you get in the Baltimore spot where they're first place in their division. They've got the top farm system in baseball. That's just ridiculous. And the Royals are a long way off from that. They could go to that route, but it'd be about 4 or 5 years before they're competitive again. They can't go the Rays route because their player development team is largely the same. There's some new voices, and that's helped a lot of guys, but the Rays have a ridiculous scouting department, player development team. They're kind of like Oakland back in the Billy Beane era where they just always found a lot of value for guys that didn't cost a lot of money. The third route, the unlikeliest of them, is going the Texas Rangers route. GM Chris Young, former Kansas City Royal, now Dayton Moore's over there as well. It was just spend. They lost 90-plus games last year and said, doesn't matter. We're going to open up every avenue of cash and throw it into this team. Now, it's unlikely for the Royals to do that because it would be foolish. You lose 100-plus games and just throw 5-6-year deals at everybody around there in baseball. Doesn't mean the team's necessarily going to get better. I mean, Texas, they just could afford everybody. They won a bidding war with everyone. And now we saw at the deadline. They won a bidding war with everyone. And they should be a World Series favorite on the American League side. That just feels like the unlikeliest option, and I don't need to dive into that because you, the listener, you, the follower, already know that. The team I love and I think is a likely scenario for the Royals to model themselves after and make it a fun 2024-2025. And it's going to sound off the wall a little bit, and it still is going to take good scouting, good development, and guys to flip at the right time. It's the Miami Marlins. The Royals could be the Miami Marlins in a year or two if they played all their cards correctly. The Marlins, think about it. They don't have an abundance of superstars. If we went back and forth right now, you're listening to this podcast, if we went back and forth right now, how many Marlins players could you rattle off the top of your head? Now, because I watch a lot of baseball, I could name the Jorge Soler, Brian De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez, Jazz Chisholm, Edward Cabrera, Johnny Cueto, Garrett Cooper, John Birdie. You could go down the list there. There are fun guys on the team. And the Marlins beat the HELL out of the Royals when they went down to Miami. And it's not a team that's ridiculously loaded, but they've competed all year long. It's a pretty fun pitching staff. They've got some freaks in the rotation. Edward Cabrera, he's one of those guys that's just ridiculous. Yuri Perez, he's another one, 20 years old. I mean, they really loaded up their system with great pitching talent. But when they signed free agents, they signed guys that were investing a little bit. They did invest money. That's the thing here. They invested money. It wasn't just a one-year rental deal. They invested money and built around just a handful of guys. You know, they went out there and signed Jorge Soler to the 3-year deal after he had the dramatic home run in Game 6 of the World Series for Atlanta. That was one of their splashes. They made a splash with Johnny Cueto in the offseason. Small one, but a splash. They were a little bit aggressive. They were piecing together with a lot of guys who could be starters. I think the Royals could do that next year. They could piece together a team with starters, add about 3 to 4 guys to your lineup that could be starters. Rotation, it could use a little bit of help as well. They spent on their bullpen too. Like Miami, they knew that they were at odds at their division. The Phillies won their division, and they also were the National League champs. The Mets had the highest payroll in baseball. The Braves are in their division. They were at odds. So they said, instead of just sitting back, sitting on our hands and going, okay, just kick us around for the next 162 games, they said, we want to compete. We want to compete for a wild card spot. And I think they've done a really good job of that for a team that I don't think anybody expected them to. They had their COVID year postseason berth, but other than that, the Marlins have pretty much been disappointing since moving to Miami. But I like this team a lot. And I think it's a model organization for the Royals to quickly make this team fun and competitive. Because you also don't want to waste years of young, talented players. I don't want to waste Bobby Witt Jr.'s career or Vinny Pasquantino, Michael Garcia. Help them out now. It's only going to make them better, and you can make this team fun and interesting in as short of a time as a year, 2 years. You could go the Marlins route instead of these other 3 routes. Does it mean you built up a winner for 10 years? No, but it also can push you along a little bit more by fielding a competitive team and making this team watchable and getting more butts in the seats. So I think the Marlins could be a model organization to follow for the Kansas City Royals as to where they are right now. Okay, we just have a couple minutes left in the show, so what we're going to do is preview a series that begins tonight in Philadelphia against the National League champs from last year, the Phillies. Jordan Lyles gets the ball. He'll go up against Aaron Nola. We're going to dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can follow me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. I don't know the last time that I was this excited for a Royals series in 2023. They've won 6 in a row. We're all feeling pretty good. Bobby Witt Jr. scorching hot. Michael Garcia scorching hot. The last 2 starters are guys that are going to be in your rotation next year, assuming you don't trade Brady Singer. But you have Cole Reagans, Brady Singer in the rotation. You're feeling good about some of the young guys in the lineup. And, you get to play a team on the National League side, and a really good one at that. It'll be a packed house tonight in Philly. The only downside is you have Jordan Lyles on the bump for the Royals, who likely is going to finish out the year in this rotation. Same thing for Zach Greinke. Greinke also throws in this series. And I think Alec Marsh throws on Saturday. They use Serpa and Marsh out of the bullpen in the Mets series. Maybe they make a move and bring up somebody, or they go with a bullpen game. Anthony Veneziano's been pitching really well in Omaha, but do you make his first start in Philly? I think it's worth a shot. But this series to me is just one of those series that you're going to enjoy turning on the TV for. Philly's a really fun team. It's going to be packed at Citizens Bank. Ballpark, that is. Not the bank. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of people there. But the ballpark itself, good environment, good crowd. The only thing that would have made it better was you would have had young Royals pitchers starting in this series. But you get Lyles tonight, and you get Zach Greinke, I believe, on Sunday. What I do like about these last 2 months here, and this is the way I've been approaching every Royals series, when you are 35 or 36 and 75, what you can play and have interest in watching the team for, what you can play is home record. You can be the team that you walk into Philadelphia, you walk in and play the Mets, you walk in and play the Twins, and you don't play the Twins anymore, but some of the top teams, Cleveland, another team in your division. You walk in and play the Yankees. You walk in and play the Red Sox. You play the top teams. You play the Cubs. And you can play home record, because the great thing about those series is you have no pressure. All the pressure in the world is on those teams, which is why I'm going to love this series tonight, because Phillies fans are waiting for this team to take off like they did last year. And they've kind of been stagnant a little bit. They're still a really good team, lots of talent. But I think everybody expected them to just barrel through the NL East after adding Trey Turner. He's looking like a bad signing. Fans are turning against him. You have a group of guys that make a hell of a lot more money than a lot of the Royals players, but this series tonight is big for them. They know the Royals are coming in hot. They know Jordan Lyles is on the bump. So you know what they should do? They should have the Royals under control in 3 to 4 innings. But when it's not, then it gets more fun. Now, Royals get this game close in the 7th or the 8th. I get it's one game on a 162-game slate. But I think it's fun when you're this hot, 6 games in a row, and you get to play home record. People are interested in what's going on. People want to see Bobby Witt Jr. The Royals are going into Philly this weekend, probably at odds to win any of the games. They're likely going to lose 2 of them, but they're red hot right now. So they're playing with house money, if you will. It's a fun time to be a Royals fan for the first time in 2023. It does not mean they're going to be great in 2024. I just urge people to live in the now. You're going to turn on the game tonight. If you're really excited like I am, you're going to be turning on the TV for pregame. You are going to put your butt down on the couch and watch this game. I'm not excited to watch Jordan Lyles, but I'm excited to watch the young guys in the lineup. Not sure what it's going to look like yet. Maybe they call up somebody right after I post this podcast, and I won't have time to talk about it because we're running up here in the last minute or so. But it's going to be a fun series. I really do. I love the interleague part of baseball still. I know you play everybody. It's not as obscure as it once was. But I love when the Royals play series like this. I love that ballpark. I love Philly's team. And it's a good test for a young Royals team that's feeling pretty good right now. Feeling pretty confident. So tonight it'll be a first pitch of 6:05 p.m. Central Time. The 35 and 75 Royals will take on the 59 and 50 Phillies. Jordan Lyles at 2-12 with a 6.15 ERA will take on Aaron Nola with a 9-7 record, 4.43 ERA. On Saturday, first pitch will be at 5:05 p.m. Right now, the listed starter is Alec Marsh, who's 0-5 with a 6.75 ERA. And as for the Phillies, they will be countering Marsh, with Christopher Sanchez, who is 0-3 with a 2.66 ERA. And then on Sunday, it'll be Zach Greinke, 1-11 with a 5.32 ERA, going up against Taijuan Walker, who has 12 wins this year and a 3.99 ERA. We'll see if the Royals can keep it going tonight for win number 7 in a row. Can they get it done against the Phillies, and can they get a series win against the Phillies? Be sure to tune in and find out. But that'll do it for this week of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for all the new listeners, for all the new followers, the new subscribers. Thank you for being a big part of Mailbag Friday. That was really fun in the opening part of our segment. But we'll be right back on Monday, likely recapping this series and any big news that breaks over the weekend. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.